Cassey, thank you so much for your time. I think this is quite an important conversation, given that, of course, the government has appealed for calm and not to panic at this time. But is it normal to feel stressed and have feelings and emotions of anxiety regardless?
Definitely. I think anyone who has a mental health issue is already going to be feeling stressed as to everything that's happening, the new guidelines and changes. But anyone who doesn't have a mental health issue, you can't help but feeling overwhelmed and worried and anxious. So it's incredibly normal. There is a real threat. There are the real news that is happening around it. So it's incredibly normal that a lot more people are feeling anxious. And I think every single day it builds. The more you're reading, the more you're seeing updates and guideline changes, the more that adds to the anxiety.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned the issue around, those who suffer from mental health issues. I mean, the government has, of course, appealed for precautions at this time, this including self-isolating. What does it mean then for those patients who are right now already suffering from with a chronic or even mild mental health issues and still have to self-isolate at the same time?
I think for us South Africans, we don't always know what social isolation or distancing measures should be taking in place. So we're learning all together, especially patients living with a mental health issue. So even those without a mental health issue, staying at home alone can be very isolating and lonely. And you're staying at home with all those anxiety, those anxious feelings growing, the stress growing as you're seeing news. So it can be very scary. And what we're trying to do now is to really arm people with tips and tools on how to cope with social isolation, if you're self-quarantining, just what to do when you're stuck at home and you're getting more and more anxious. And I think it's really important that people, especially with a mental health issue, often they might see that their symptoms might get a bit worse. They get even more anxious and stressed. So it's really important during this time that we look after their mental health and make sure that we avoid as much relapse or any episodes or any symptoms getting worse, especially during this time when we're telling people not to always go to hospitals, not to go meet face-to-face, and really looking at South Africa. Are we equipped to do things like online therapy, online support groups, and really just try to provide support via online mechanisms?
Right. I mean, the World Health Organization, Cassey, has advised against the spreading of fake news because that could even add on to more anxiety and stress, right? But what about, fine, getting the credible news sources, but overindulging in this information? I mean, we have COVID-19 everywhere, print magazine, print newspapers, television, radio. Is that also healthy in terms of constantly just indulging in just informing yourself around what is happening, or is it a good thing to know what's happening as much as possible?
I think information is good, and again, reliable resources is very important, especially in the age where there's WhatsApp groups and family chats, and online you can access online videos, online news, newspapers, radios. Everywhere you're going, people are talking about COVID, so you almost feel like you can't escape. And I think we're having to also filter how much we're reading and how much we're taking in, because it is scary. And it's very difficult when you go get your groceries not to feel panicked when everyone else is getting toilet paper and filling up their trolleys. And I think we're having to control how much we're reading, how much we're seeing. So we're even encouraging people, set specific times, check the news, at specific times of the day. Don't keep the news or online or reading updates all day, every day, because that fuels the anxiety. It fuels that panic and worry. So check in at specific times. Make sure that you're also balancing that with listening to music, watching movies, reading books, getting some fresh air, opening windows, taking a walk outside, doing that kind of thing to balance how much you're getting in. I think also be very careful. Fake news is scary. It's there to evoke that emotion, to evoke that anxiety. Be very careful of what you're sharing. If you're part of any groups that people are sharing, you can leave from those groups. So control what you can and know what to do with the part that you can't control.
Right.
So I think it's putting in those schedules and those rules and boundaries to really look after ourselves during this time.
Yeah, and just before I let you go, Cassey, I mean, we know at this point we have approximately 274 confirmed cases in the country, expected to increase, of course. But I mean, I think most times when you look at these numbers, we'll look at those South Africans who have tested positive, so those who are directly affected, right? What about those loved ones, family members, friends who are equally worried that their loved ones have contracted COVID-19 at this time and have to give the support while they themselves are quite worried and anxious? What message or other advice would you give to them?
I think this gives us a great opportunity to connect online and virtually and socially, just being there for them, checking in with your loved ones. How are you doing? Let's find new ways of touching base, whether it's video calls, whether we're writing emails and updates or calling more often. I think that's really important, is to show them support. I think there's a lot of guilt that often comes in with being exposed or going out, and who do I come in contact with? And I think just as family and friends, we have to find new ways of connecting and sharing and offering support during this time, especially someone who's self-isolating. We're, as South Africans, we're not used to not being connected to other people or not being able to go out. And so finding new ways. And I think this is also where the positive side of internet and social media is that so many people are sharing really cool things that we're doing. Online courses, videos, articles. Go and connect and share those things with people so that they can feel more connected and do something besides just sit at home and stress and get more anxious because of COVID.
Indeed. And the message is we will get through this as a country. Thank you so much, Cassey Chambers from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group.